fever had teeth. It gnawed at Isla's bones, chewed through her flesh, left her shaking so violently that her own body felt like a stranger's. She pressed one hand against the rough bark of a Douglas fir, the other cradling the swell of her belly where her daughter kicked weakly as if sensing her mother's fading strength. 7 months. 7 months of hiding what grew inside her, of scrubbing pots until her knuckles bled, of pretending she was nothing more than what they believed her to be, a kitchen maid with no family, no name, no worth. The birthmark on her hip burned like a brand. She'd discovered its true meaning 3 weeks ago, when the old healer woman had examined her in secret, checking on the baby's position. The mark had always been there, a pale pattern she'd assumed was just an odd birthmark barely visible against her fair skin. But under the healer's candlelight, it had seemed to glow with faint silvery luminescence. The healer's weathered face had gone pale as mountain snow. "Winter rose," she'd whispered, tracing the intricate pattern with a trembling finger. "Gods above, child, you carry royal blood. Frostborn, the last of your line." Isla hadn't believed her, couldn't believe her. She was nobody. An orphan left on the manor's doorstep 18 winters ago, raised to serve, taught to be invisible. But then Lord Caspian Ravenwing had summoned her to his private chambers, and the hunger in his eyes had told her everything she needed to know. He knows. He knows what I am, and he wants it. The memory clawed at her as she stumbled forward through the pre-dawn darkness of the Wyoming wilderness, branches scratching at her arms, her thin dress already torn in a dozen places. She could still feel his hands on her shoulders, still smell the wine on his breath as he'd leaned close and whispered his intentions. "Such power, sleeping in your veins, little kitchen mouse. Did you really think you could hide forever? Issa, magic hasn't been seen in these lands for 3 generations. Imagine what I could do with it. Imagine what we could do together. When I mark you, when I claim that frostborn bloodline, I'll have more than just a broodmare. I'll have a weapon." She'd spat in his face. The beating that followed had been swift and brutal, his guards holding her arms, while Lord Caspian himself delivered each blow. But they'd made a mistake. They'd left her alone afterward, assuming the locked door and her broken state would be enough to contain her. They'd forgotten that desperate women with children to protect could accomplish impossible things. The window had been small. She'd been smaller. Now she walked staggered through territory that belonged to no one. The stretch of wild forest between Caspian's lands and the border of the Iron Peak Kingdom. Her feet were bleeding. She couldn't feel her toes anymore. Something strange had sustained her these past 3 days. A coldness in her blood that pushed back against the fever's heat, an instinct that kept her moving when her body should have collapsed. The frostborn magic she didn't know she possessed was keeping her alive, burning through her reserves to get her and her child to safety. But reserves didn't last forever. The fever painted the world in shimmering, uncertain colors. More than once she found herself talking to her daughter, the words slipping out unbidden. "Almost there, little one. Almost safe. He won't find us. He won't touch you. I'll die first. Do you understand? I'll die before I let him use you the way he wanted to use me." "But you're dying anyway," a cold voice whispered in the back of her mind. "The fever is eating you alive. You won't make it to the border. You'll collapse in these woods, and the wolves will find your bones come spring." "Shut up," she muttered, lurching forward. "Shut up, shut up, shut up." The trees began to thin. Isla's heart hammered against her ribs from exertion, from fever, from the desperate hope that clawed at her chest like a living thing. She could see it now, the great stone arch that marked the border crossing, carved from the same gray granite that gave the Iron Peak Kingdom its name. 2 guards stood at attention in the pale light of early morning, their breath misting in the mountain air. Iron Peak territory, the AlphaKing's domain. She knew nothing about him except rumors. That he was cold as the mountain his kingdom was named for. That he'd never taken a mate despite being well past the age for it. That his justice was swift and his mercy non-existent. That he'd ruled for 500 years and would rule for 500 more unless someone strong enough came along to challenge him. But he wasn't Lord Caspian Ravenwing. That was enough. "Please," she breathed, stumbling toward the arch. "Please, please, please." The guards saw her coming. She watched their faces harden, watched disgust flicker across their features as they took in her torn dress, her swollen belly, the fever-bright wildness in her eyes. One of them stepped forward, hand dropping to the sword at his hip. "Halt, state your business." "Asylum." The word came out cracked, broken. "I'm requesting asylum, please. I have nowhere else to go." "Borders closed to refugees." The second guard's voice dripped with contempt. "We've got enough mouths to feed without adding more. Go back where you came from." "I can't." Isla's knees buckled. She caught herself on the stone-arched fingernails scraping against ancient rock. Please, you don't understand. Lord Caspian, he'll kill me. He'll take my baby. I can't go back. I can't. Lord Caspian. The first guard laughed, a cruel sound that echoed off the stones. The Ravenwing territory is 3 days' walk from here. You expect us and believe a pregnant woman in your condition made it that far on foot? I did. I swear to you I did. Please, just let me through. I'll work. I'll do anything. I have skills. I can cook. I can clean. You can turn around and take your bastard somewhere else. The second guard stepped closer, his lip curling. We don't need refugee trash spreading disease in the kingdom. Look at you. You're burning up, probably carrying plague. You think we're going to let you waltz through and infect honest citizens? Isla's vision swam. The world tilted sideways, and she felt herself falling. Felt the cold morning air rush past her face, felt nothing. Darkness swallowed her whole. She surfaced to the sound of arguing voices, distant and distorted, like they were coming through water. Her cheek was pressed against frozen ground, and somewhere nearby someone was shouting, "Found her like this, my king." She collapsed before you could what? A new voice deeper than the others, rough with barely contained fury. Render aid, show basic decency. She's pregnant, for God's sake. She's clearly ill, and you left her lying in the dirt like garbage. She's a refugee, sire. The protocols clearly state, I don't give a damn about protocols. Isla forced her eyes open. The world was still spinning, but she could make out shapes, the two guards standing rigid with terror, and a third figure looming over her. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair shot through with silver at the temples, though his face was young, maybe 30 winters at most. The slow aging of ancient wolf bloodlines that could stretch a single lifetime across centuries. He wore plain traveling clothes rather than royal finery, but there was no mistaking the authority in his stance, the way the guards cowered before him. AlphaKing Theron. Iron Peak, she thought dimly. He's real. He's here. He turned toward her, and their eyes met. Isla's breath stopped. He was handsome in a severe way. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. But it was his eyes that held her frozen. Gray as winter storms, gray as the stones of his kingdom, gray as the sky before snow falls. They widened as he looked at her, something flickering in their depths that she couldn't name. You're awake, he said, and his voice had changed. Softer now, almost gentle. He crouched beside her, and she could smell him, suddenly cutting through the fever haze, pine and wood smoke, cold mountain air, something wilder underneath. Something that made her wolf that presence she'd only recently discovered, living beneath her skin, stir and stretch, and open ancient eyes. Can you tell me your name? Isla. It came out as a whisper. Isla Frost. She hadn't meant to say it, the name that wasn't supposed to be hers, the heritage she'd only just discovered. But the fever was burning through her walls, her defenses leaving her stripped, raw and honest. The king's jaw tightened. Frost, you're certain. The birthmark. Her hand moved weakly toward her hip. The healer said winter rose. I didn't know. I didn't know until 3 weeks ago. I'm not lying, I swear. I believe you. He said it simply without hesitation, and something in Isla's chest cracked open at the unexpected kindness. When was the last time anyone had believed her? When was the last time anyone had looked at her like she mattered, my king? One of the guards stepped forward, voice thin with anxiety. If she's truly of the Frostborn line, the political implications are mine to manage. Theron didn't look away from Isla's face. You two are relieved of duty. Report to Commander Steele and explain why you left a pregnant woman to die at our gates. I expect your resignations on my desk by nightfall. His voice was ice, the same cold ruthlessness that had made him legendary. And if I ever hear of either of you treating a refugee with such cruelty again, you won't be dismissed. You'll be executed. Am I understood? But sire, go. They went. Isla watched them scramble away, their boots crunching on frost-hardened ground. And then she was alone with the AlphaKing of Iron Peak. He hadn't touched her yet. She realized he was still crouched beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, but he hadn't laid a single finger on her. I'm going to carry you, he said quietly. You can't walk, and the nearest healer is inside the fortress. I need to touch you. Is that all right? Isla blinked at him, uncomprehending. Was he asking permission? Lord Caspian had never asked permission for anything. Lord Caspian had taken what he wanted, with brutal efficiency, had treated her like property had. Yes, she managed. It's all right. Theron nodded once, and then his arms were sliding beneath her, one behind her shoulders, one under her knees, and he was lifting her as easily as if she weighed nothing at all. Isla gasped as her body pressed against his chest as the heat of him seeped through her thin dress and into her fever-chilled bones. And then the world shifted. Heat flooded through her, but not the sick heat of fever. Something else entirely. Something that started where his skin touched hers and spread outward like liquid gold, like sunlight, like the first warmth of spring after a long winter. Deep inside her, in a place she hadn't known existed, something stirred. Something stretched and yawned and opened ancient eyes. Mate, the something whispered. Mine. Ours. Finally ours. Theron froze mid-step. His whole body went rigid, his arms tightening around her, a low sound rumbling from his chest. Not quite a growl, not quite a groan, something raw and primal that made every hair on Isla's body stand on end. She watched his eyes, those storm-gray eyes, and saw them flash brilliant gold before settling back to gray. Impossible, he breathed. Isla couldn't speak, couldn't think. She was carrying another man's child. She was nobody. She was running for her life. And yet every cell in her body was screaming recognition. Yours, home, safety, forever. Their eyes locked. The world narrowed down to just them, just his arms around her, just the bond thrumming between them like a plucked harp string, just this impossible recognition that neither of them could deny. We need to get you inside, Theron said finally, his voice rougher than before. The healers. You're burning up. I know what I felt. Isla didn't know where the words came from, only that they were true. That wasn't the fever, that was, I know. His arms tightened, fractionally pulling her closer to his chest. I know what it was, but you're ill, and you're pregnant, and right now the only thing that matters is making sure you survive the night. We can discuss the impossible, so you're no longer dying in my arms. He started walking, carrying her through the great stone arch and into Iron Peak territory. Isla let her head fall against his shoulder, too exhausted to hold it up any longer. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady, faster than it should be. She could smell him with every breath, that intoxicating mix of pine and smoke and wild. She could feel the bond between them, delicate as spider silk, strong as forged steel. The fortress rose before them like a mountain given form and purpose, its walls hewn from the same gray stone that gave the kingdom its name. Isla watched it grow larger through fever-blurred eyes, her cheek still pressed against the warm leather of Theron's traveling coat, her body cradled against his chest with a gentleness that made something in her ache. Guards snapped to attention as they passed, their faces flickering with surprise and curiosity. But none dared speak. None dared question why their king carried a bedraggled, pregnant refugee in his arms like she was something precious. The bond between them pulsed with each step he took, a steady rhythm that matched his heartbeat, that seemed to echo in the hollow spaces of her chest. Stay awake, Theron murmured, his voice a low rumble against her ear. Talk to me. Tell me about yourself. There's nothing to tell. The words came out slurred, thick with fever. I'm a kitchen maid. Was a kitchen maid. I scrubbed pots and peeled vegetables and tried to be invisible. And the Frostborn bloodline. Isla's laugh was bitter, broken. I didn't know. 18 years of nothing, of being nobody, and then the healer saw my birthmark and everything changed. Lord Caspian found out. He wanted... She shuddered, unable to finish the sentence. I ran. I had to run. Theron's arms tightened around her, and she felt his chest vibrate with another of those low rumbling sounds. Not quite a growl, but close. Possessive, protective. You're safe now. He can't touch you here. You don't know him. You don't know what he's capable of. I know what I'm capable of. His voice was cold as the mountain wind, sharp as the edge of a blade. And I know that anyone who tries to harm you will answer to me. The heat inside Isla's chest flared brighter, spreading through her veins like liquid fire. Her wolf stirred and stretched, pressing against the boundaries of her consciousness with an urgency that made her gasp. He protects. He defends. He is ours. I don't understand, Isla breathed, more to herself than to him. I'm carrying another man's child. I'm nobody. Why would the bond choose? The bond doesn't care about circumstances. Theron's jaw brushed against her hair, and she felt him inhale deeply, scenting her. It sees souls, not situations. And yours. He stopped, his voice catching. Gods above Isla, you smell like winter roses and fresh snow. You smell like home. The world tilted again, but this time it wasn't the fever. Isla's eyes slipped closed and she felt herself falling. Not physically, not with his arms so solid around her, but internally, tumbling into the bond that stretched between them like a golden thread. She saw flashes of something she couldn't explain. A lonely throne, a cold bed, years upon years of isolation wrapped around a heart that had forgotten how to hope. His loneliness, his pain, his desperate secret wish for something more than duty and responsibility, and the endless weight of a crown. When she opened her eyes again, Theron was staring down at her with an expression she couldn't read. His gray eyes had flecks of gold in them now glimmering like distant stars. "You felt that," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Isla nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. "I felt it too." His voice was rough, strained, like he was holding something back by sheer force of will. "I felt you, Isla, your fear, your courage, the way you've been fighting every moment of your life just to survive. You're the strongest person I've ever met." "I'm not strong, I'm terrified." "Bravery isn't the absence of fear." He turned a corner, carrying her deeper into the fortress. "Bravery is feeling the fear and moving forward anyway. You walked 3 days through wild territory, pregnant and fevered, because you refused to surrender. That's not weakness. That's iron will wrapped in mortal flesh." Isla felt tears prick at her eyes, hot and stinging, completely unwelcome. She hadn't cried in years, not since she'd learned that tears accomplished nothing except making her an easier target. But something about his words, about the conviction in his voice, cracked through the walls she'd built around herself. As the first tear slipped down her cheek, she noticed something strange. Frost was creeping across the stone wall beside them, delicate crystals forming without her conscious thought. She jerked, startled, and the frost melted as quickly as it had appeared. "Here we are." Theron stopped before a door of dark wood, nudging it open with his shoulder. Beyond it lay a room larger than any Isla had ever been, in a massive four-poster bed draped in furs and soft linens, a fireplace already blazing with warmth, windows that looked out over snow-capped mountains stretching to the horizon. "This will be your chamber. You'll have everything you need." He carried her to the bed and laid her down with impossible gentleness, arranging pillows behind her back to support her swollen belly. Isla watched him move, watched the way his hands, large and calloused. Warrior's hands, handled her like she was made of spun glass. "The healers will be here shortly," he said, straightening. "I've sent word ahead. They'll bring down your fever and make sure the baby's healthy." Before he could continue, a knock sounded at the door. 3 women entered, all wearing the gray robes of healers, their faces kind but professional. The eldest had silver hair pulled back in a braid and eyes that saw too much. "Your Majesty." She bowed to Theron, then turned to Isla. "I'm Rowena, head healer. Let's see about getting that fever down, shall we?" The examination was thorough but gentle. Rowena's hands glowed with a faint green light as she pressed them to Isla's forehead, her belly, the pulse points at her wrists. The other healers worked in concert, applying cool cloths, mixing tinctures, murmuring observations. "The baby is strong," Rowena announced, and Isla sobbed with relief. "A fighter like her mother. The fever hasn't touched her. But you, child." Her expression grew grave. "Your frostborn magic has been burning through your reserves. It kept you alive these 3 days, but it's nearly consumed you in the process." Frostborn magic. Isla looked down at her hands, remembering the frost on the stone wall. The birthmark isn't just a symbol. It's a manifestation of power that's been sleeping in your bloodline for generations. Rowena's fingers traced a pattern in the air, and ice crystals formed, dancing like diamonds. "This is what you carry, ice in winter and the deep cold of the earth. When you were in danger, it woke to protect you. I don't know how to control it. You will learn," Rowena smiled. "But first you rest. Drink this." She offered a cup of something that smelled of mint and moonlight. Isla drank and almost immediately felt the fever begin to ebb, replaced by a deep, bone-tired exhaustion. "Sleep," Rowena commanded. "We'll be back to check on you in the morning." The healers filed out, leaving Isla alone with Theron once more. He'd moved to a chair beside the bed, settling his large frame into it, like he had no intention of leaving. "You don't have to stay," Isla said, her words already slurring with approaching sleep. "You must have duties, a kingdom to run." "The kingdom can wait." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The touch sent sparks racing across her skin. "Sleep, Isla. I'll be here when you wake." "You promise?" "I promise, Urshamam." She wanted to fight it, wanted to stay awake and make sense of everything that had happened, but her body had other plans. Her eyes slipped closed, and darkness rose up to claim her. The last thing she felt was the bond between them, humming with contentment, singing her into sleep with a lullaby older than words. Isla woke to sunlight streaming through the massive windows and the smell of fresh bread wafting from somewhere nearby. For a moment she lay still, disoriented by the softness of the bed beneath her, the warmth of furs piled around her body, the absence of fear clawing at her throat. Then memory flooded back the border, the collapsed Theron carrying her across the threshold, the mate bond snapping into place like the final piece of a puzzle she hadn't known she was solving. Her hand went instinctively to her belly. The baby kicked strong and insistent, and relief made Isla's eyes sting with tears. Still alive. Still fighting. She turned her head and found the chair beside her bed empty. A flicker of something like disappointment moved through her chest, followed immediately by the bond itself, that golden thread stretching away from her towards some distant part of the fortress. Still here. Still close. The door opened and a woman entered carrying a tray. She was perhaps 60, with steel-gray hair, pulled back in a severe bun, and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Awake, I see. Good. The woman set the tray on a table near the window. I'm Greta Thornfield, head of the household staff. His Majesty asked me to see to your needs personally. Her gaze swept over Isla with clinical efficiency, taking in her tangled hair, her borrowed nightgown. Someone had changed her clothes while she slept, the lingering pallor of her cheeks. You look like a stiff wind would knock you over. Sit up before you fall over. Isla obeyed, too surprised by the woman's bluntness to argue. Greta nodded approvingly. Good, at least you have sense. Some of these high-born ladies would argue just to prove they could. She moved to the tray, uncovering dishes. That's breakfast. You'll eat all of it. The king would have my head if I let you waste away. The king, Isla's voice came out rough from sleep. Where is he? The court session started at dawn. Greta's expression softened slightly. He stayed with you all the night. Fell asleep in that chair around midnight. Left only when Commander Steele came to fetch him for council business. Made me swear on my life I'd be here when you woke. Something warm bloomed in Isla's chest. He'd kept his promise. Stayed while she slept. Only left when duty demanded. Eat, Greta commanded, bringing the tray to the bed. You're thin as a rail and growing a babe. Can't have you fainting again. The food was better than anything Isla had eaten in her entire life. Eggs cooked with cream, and herbs bread still warm from the ovens. Sliced fruit that must have cost a small fortune this far north in late winter. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, feeling strength flow back into her body with every mouthful. Greta watched with approval, then moved to the wardrobe. His Majesty had the seamstresses work through the night. Can't have you meeting the court in rags. Meeting the court. Isla's fork froze halfway to her mouth. This afternoon. Formal presentation. The nobles need to know who you are, why you're here. Greta pulled out a dress of deep blue wool, simple but well made. Don't worry, the king will be there. He won't let them eat you alive. Isla set down her fork, appetite suddenly gone. The court. Nobles who would take one look at her swollen belly, her refugee status, and see nothing but trash to be discarded. I can't, she whispered. I'm not ready. I'm nobody. They'll see what the king tells them to see. Greta's voice was firm. And he's made it clear you're under royal protection. Anyone who dares insult you insults him. She moved to the bed, her expression gentling. Child, I've served 3 generations of Iron Peak kings. I've never seen Theron look at anyone the way he looked at you when he carried you through those gates. Like you were the only thing in the world that mattered. Whatever you think you are, whatever those bastards in Ravenwing territory told you were, get it. Here you're precious. The words hit Isla like a physical blow. Precious. When had anyone called her that? When had anyone looked at her and seen value beyond what she could scrub or cook or endure? Now finish eating, Greta said briskly. Then we'll get you bathed and dressed. The presentation is at midday and we've got work to do. The next hours passed in a blur. A copper tub was brought in filled with steaming water, scented with lavender. Greta helped Isla bathe, the first hot bath she'd had in months, and washed her hair with gentle efficiency. When she finally held up a mirror, Isla barely recognized the woman staring back. Clean, cared for, almost respectable. There, Greta said with satisfaction. Now you look like someone worth protecting. A knock at the door made them both turn. A young woman entered, dark-haired and perhaps 22, with wide eyes and a shy smile. This is Leora, Greta said. She'll be your personal maid. Anything you need, you tell her. Leora curtsied, her smile brightening. It's an honor, my lady. I'm not a lady, Isla said automatically. You will be. Greta's tone brooked no argument. The king doesn't bring just anyone to the fortress. Doesn't give them the royal guest quarters. Doesn't stay by their bedside all night. Mark my words, you're more than you think. Another knock, and this time it was a guard in Iron Peak gray and silver. His Majesty requests Lady Isla's presence in the throne room. The walk through the fortress seemed endless. Corridors of gray stone stretched in every direction, servants bowing as she passed. Word had clearly spread the king's mysterious guest was awake. The throne room doors swung open, revealing a hall that stole Isla's breath. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into shadow above, and at the far end sat Theron on a throne of iron and granite. He wore formal attire, now black leather and silver mail, a circlet of iron resting on his dark hair. But his eyes found hers the moment she entered, and the bond between them flared with recognition. The hall was filled with nobles, perhaps 200 of them. They turned as one to stare at her, and she felt the weight of their judgment like a physical thing. The whispers started immediately. Who is she? Pregnant gods above. What's the king thinking? Isla's steps faltered. This was a mistake. She didn't belong here. The bond pulsed warm and steady. She looked up to find Theron watching her, and in his eyes she saw absolute certainty. He believed she belonged here. She started walking again. The crowd parted before her, creating a path to the throne. Isla kept her eyes on Theron, using him as an anchor. She reached the base of the dais and stopped. Theron rose and descended the steps to stand before her. The room fell silent. Lords and ladies of Iron Peak, his voice rang out, I present to you Isla Frost's guest under royal protection and bearer of the Frostborn bloodline. Chaos erupted. Frostborn, impossible. The bloodline died out. Enough, Theron's voice cut through the noise. The birthmark has been verified by Healer Rowena. The magic has manifested. Isla Frost is the last of her line, and she has requested a sanctuary in Iron Peak territory. And you granted it. A woman stepped forward. She was beautiful in a cold, perfect way. Perhaps 35, with raven black hair and eyes like chips of amber. Her dress was crimson silk. Lady Evangeline Bloodmore, Greta whispered in Isla's ear. Be careful of that one. Of course I granted it, Theron said, his voice icy. She arrived at our borders fevered, pregnant, and fleeing persecution. What would you have me do? Turn her away to die? The protocols exist for a reason, Your Majesty. Evangeline's smile was sharp as broken glass. We have procedures for refugees, background checks, quarantine periods. We can't simply allow anyone who claims persecution to enter the kingdom. She's not just anyone. Theron's hand moved to the small of Isla's back. The mate bond has chosen her. The words fell like stones into still water. Gasps and exclamations rose to fill the hall. Evangeline's perfect mask cracked. For just a moment, Isla saw pure fury before control reasserted itself. The mate bond, she repeated carefully. How fortunate. And yet, Your Majesty, surely you see the complications. She's pregnant with another man's child. The question of succession alone is mine to address. Theron's voice had gone dangerously quiet. As is the question of who I choose to protect, to honor, to claim as mate. Do you challenge my judgment, Lady Bloodmore? It was a trap. Challenge the king and face exile, accept and lose position. Of course not, Your Majesty. She curtsied, but her eyes remained fixed on Isla. I merely express concern for the kingdom's welfare. Your concern is noted and dismissed. Isla Frost is under my personal protection. Any who wish to question her presence may direct those questions to me. Personally, the threat was unmistakable. Now, Theron turned to Isla, his expression softening. You've had a long morning. Let me escort you back to your chambers. Only when they were alone in a quiet corridor did Theron stop. I'm sorry, he said. I should have warned you. You saved me from dying at your border, Isla said quietly. You don't owe me apologies. I owe you everything. His hand came up to cup her face. 500 years, Isla. 500 years alone, and then you collapsed at my feet like a gift from the gods themselves. Lady Bloodmore, Isla said. She wants you. She's wanted the throne for 3 years, positioned herself as the logical choice for queen. Her bloodline is old, her family influential. The Council of 6 Alphas supports her claim. The Council of 6 Alpha families who control the iron ore trade, 50 million in annual exports. They've been pressuring me to choose Evangeline as my mate. His thumb traced her cheek. They won't be pleased that I've found my true mate elsewhere. I'm just a kitchen maid with a bastard in her belly. You're my mate, that's all that matters. But she saw the shadow in his eyes, the weight of politics, of trade agreements, of keeping a kingdom fed. She was a complication he didn't need. Come, Theron said, let me show you something. He led her to a war room. A massive table dominated the center, covered in carved maps. Mountain ranges, rivers, territories marked in different colors. This is how I see the world, Theron said. Every threat, every opportunity, every decision that affects 10,000 lives. He pointed to the southwest. Ravenwing territory, Caspian's lands. If you were planning an attack from here to Iron Peak, what route would you take? Isla leaned over the map studying. Years of planning, her escape had taught her to read land. Not the main road, she said slowly. Too exposed. Her finger traced a path through mountains. Here, this pass, it's narrow, but it cuts 2 days off the journey. And it emerges here. She tapped a spot near Iron Peak's southern border. Behind your main defensive line. Theron stared at her, wonder dawning. That's exactly right. That's the weak point Commander Steele identified. He moved closer. You learned this from planning your escape. I learned it from being invisible. I spent 2 years memorizing every path within 50 miles of Ravenwing Manor. She met his gaze. I knew if I ran, I'd only get one chance. So I made sure I knew exactly where I was going. Do you see now? This is why you belong here. Because you're brilliant and resourceful, and you see things others miss. Before she could respond, the door burst open. Commander Aldrich Steele stood there, his weathered face grave. Your Majesty, we have a problem. What kind of problem? Leora, the maid assigned to Lady Isla. Aldrich's eyes flicked to Isla. Greta reported suspicious behavior. I had her followed. She was seen entering Lady Bloodmore's quarters an hour ago. The temperature seemed to drop. How long has she been in Bloodmore's service? 3 years, sire. Came with a recommendation from Evangeline's household. 3 years. The same time Evangeline had been positioning herself as future queen. What was she carrying? Isla asked quietly. Aldrich turned to her, surprised. My lady, when she left Evangeline's quarters, was she carrying anything, a tray, for evening tea service? For my chambers. Understanding dawned on their faces. Stop her, Theron commanded. Now, don't let her near Isla's chambers, and bring Evangeline to me, immediately. Aldrich bowed and ran. Theron pulled Isla against his chest, arms wrapping around her. I won't let her hurt you. I swear on my life, on my throne, on 500 years of existence, I will not let anyone take you from me. The bond flared between them, fierce and protective. And somewhere in the fortress, Evangeline Bloodmore was about to learn what happened to those who threatened the AlphaKing's mate. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange rhythm of growing trust and mounting danger. Theron moved Isla to chambers adjacent to his own stationed guards outside her door. Leora had been arrested before delivering the poison T-mercury compounds mixed into herbs enough to kill slowly. The maid sat in dungeons now awaiting trial, but Evangeline remained free. We have no proof she ordered it, Theron explained one evening as they shared dinner. This had become their ritual meals together, long conversations, the bond strengthening daily. Leora claims she acted alone. Won't implicate anyone. Because Evangeline has leverage, Isla said. Family, probably. Aldrich is investigating. Theron's hand covered hers. We'll find the connection. She'll have another plan. Isla met his eyes. One maid arrested won't stop her. The baby kicked hard. She was nearly 8 months along now, her belly enormous. But the child was healthy. Rowena checked daily, marveling at the strength of the heartbeat. Your daughter is a fighter, the healer said each time. Like her mother. Daughter. Everyone spoke of the baby as if she were already Theron's. Theron acted like she was his. He spoke to Isla's belly every night, telling stories of Iron Peak's history, of the mountains he'd protect her in. When he felt those strong kicks, his face transformed with wonder. She knows my voice already, he'd said one night. She's saying hello. Now with dinner finished, Isla felt the weight of everything unsaid. Theron. What happens when she's born? When the nobles see a child who's clearly not yours? He was quiet, thumb tracing circles on her hand. Then they'll see a child I've chosen to claim. A daughter I'll protect with every breath. His gray eyes found hers fierce. Blood doesn't make a father. Choice does. And I choose her. I choose you. Both of you. Tears burned behind Isla's eyes. The Council of Six won't accept. The Council of Six can accept my decision or find themselves without Iron Peak trade routes. I am still king. My word is still law. But she saw the tension in his shoulders. A knock interrupted. Commander Aldrich entered, face grim. Your Majesty, we've intercepted another letter. He held out sealed parchment. Theron broke the wax seal bearing Evangeline's crest and read. Isla watched his expression shift to thunderous. What does it say? It's addressed to Lord Caspian Ravenwing, offering detailed information about Iron Peak's southern defenses in exchange for 5 million in gold and access to the iron mines. He looked up. She's selling us out, inviting him to attack. The room tilted. Isla's hand went to her belly. She wouldn't. That's treason. That's desperation. Theron's hand clenched. She knows she's lost, so if she can't have Iron Peak, no one will. The letter mentions Lady Isla specifically, Aldrich said quietly. It promises Caspian will have access to the Frostborn heir once Iron Peak falls. Suggests the child would be useful for breeding purposes. Ice flooded Isla's veins. Terror, not magic. Evangeline was trying to deliver Isla and her daughter back to the monster they'd fled. How long until Caspian could mobilize? Theron's voice had gone cold. The letter is 2 weeks old. If he received it and acted immediately, Aldrich's expression was bleak. He could be at our southern border within 14 days, maybe less. That's now, Isla's voice shook. He could already be. We'll be ready. Theron's hand went to her shoulder. Aldrich mobilized southern battalions. 300 men to the border passes. Scouts on every approach. If Caspian moves, I want to know. Yes, sire. Aldrich hesitated. And Lady Bloodmore. Arrest her. Tonight. Charge her with treason, conspiracy with a foreign lord, and attempted murder. Theron's eyes were winter ice. She wanted to play politics. Let's show her what happens when you lose. After Aldrich left, Theron pulled Isla against him. I won't let him take you. I know. Isla pressed her face into his shoulder. I know. But fear clawed at her throat. Caspian was coming. She could feel it, and this time she wouldn't be alone when she faced him. The next morning, Isla woke to shouting. She struggled from bed 8 months pregnant, made everything difficult, and moved to the window. Below, guards ran weapons gleaming. Horses stamped as they were saddled. An army preparing for war. The door burst open. Theron strode in, already in battle leather, sword strapped to his back. Caspian's been spotted, 50 miles south with 150 men. His voice was clipped. I'm taking 300 warriors to meet him at the border. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You're 8 months, and he wants me. Isla moved toward him, one hand on her belly. Theron, listen. If you go without me, this becomes a territorial dispute. 2 kings fighting over land. But if I'm there, if Caspian sees I chose you willingly, it changes everything. It puts you in danger. I'm already in danger. At least at your side I can fight. Theron stared, torn between instinct and strategy. Finally, he closed his eyes. You stay in the center, protected. And if things go wrong, they won't. If they do, you run north and don't look back. Isla nodded, though they both knew she wouldn't run. The ride south took 6 hours. Isla rode in a padded cart surrounded by guards, Theron alongside on a warhorse. The bond thrummed with tension. They reached the southern border as sun was setting, painting mountains gold and crimson. And there beyond the stone markers stood Caspian Ravenwing. He looked exactly as Isla remembered, tall, broad-shouldered, handsome in a cruel way. 45 but still strong. Dark hair shot through with silver eyes like frozen earth. Behind him stood 150 men in Ravenwing colors, all armed. Theron dismounted and helped Isla down. She felt every eye turned to her. Lord Caspian, Theron's voice carried, you're trespassing on Iron Peak's approach. State your business or turn back. Caspian's eyes found Isla's smile like a knife's edge. I've come to reclaim stolen property, Your Majesty. That woman is mine. She fled without permission, carrying my child. I'm simply exercising my rights. She's not your property, Theron's voice cut through. She's my mate, and that child is under my protection. Your mate, Caspian laughed, grinding stones. How convenient. Tell me, does your mate Bond know what she really is? A kitchen maid, a nobody, a vessel I used to carry frostborn magic. His gaze raked Isla's belly. Magic that belongs to me. Magic belongs to no one, Deno. Isla's voice rang out stronger than she felt. And I was never yours, Caspian. You took what wasn't offered. You called it breeding when the word is rape. Absolute silence. Caspian's face darkened. Careful, little mouse, one word from me and my men attack. Do you think your king can protect you? I think, Theron said quietly, that you're looking at 300 Iron Peak warriors who would die for their Luna Queen, while you have 150 mercenaries who'll run when things get difficult. So yes, I can protect her. Can you protect yourself? Caspian's hand went to his belt. Isla saw it, dark metal chain links carved with runes that made her magic recoil. Frost shackles, she breathed. Very good. Caspian held them up. Forged during the Great Purge to nullify ice magic. Paid a fortune. Imagine my surprise when the spies reported you'd survived. When I realized the kitchen maid carried the power I'd been searching for. He threw the shackles. They arced through air chain, unfurling like a snake. Isla tried to dodge, but 8 months pregnant made her slow. The metal clamped around her wrist with a click like a death knell. Her magic died instantly. The cold vanished, leaving her hollow, vulnerable human. Isla gasped, falling. Theron caught her snarl tearing from his throat. "Bad move, Ravenwing." "Is it?" Caspian gestured, men drawing weapons. "Your mate is powerless. My men are ready, and I have nothing to lose. Hand over Isla and that baby and I leave peacefully. Or we fight, your mate gets caught in crossfire, and that child dies before drawing breath." Theron vibrated with violence. Isla felt his wolf clawing at skin. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't give him what he wants. I won't lose you. You won't. Trust me." She struggled up, Theron steadying her. The shackles were heavy on her wrist, runes pulsing. But something else pulsed, the baby kicking hard, angry at chains binding her mother. And Isla realized something. Shackles nullified magic, but not knowledge. "Caspian," she called. "You want me? Come get me yourself. Or are you afraid to face an unarmed, pregnant woman?" "Isla, what?" "Trust me," she said softer. Then louder. "You always were a coward, sending guards to hold me while you took what you wanted. Come on. Prove you're brave enough to claim your property." She saw it work. Pride and anger flashed across his face. And Alpha couldn't refuse direct challenge, especially before his men. He started walking toward her. Isla's eyes scanned ground. Their nightshade growing near border stones. Glossy black berries poisoned to most deadly to those with certain allergies. She'd learned that in Caspian's kitchens. Which herbs made him sneeze, which foods closed his throat. Knowledge was power even for a kitchen maid, especially for a kitchen maid. Caspian reached her hand, shooting out. "Time to come home, little mouse." Isla stumbled as if weak shackled hands falling near the nightshade patch. Her fingers, though bound, could still move enough to pluck berries, crush them against metal links. She'd planned this, counted on his arrogance. When he yanked her upright, she flung berry juice directly into his face. Reaction was immediate. Caspian's eyes went wide, throat starting to close. He was violently allergic. She'd seen him nearly die once, when a careless cook used it in sauce. He stumbled backward, clawing at his face, gasping. And Theron's warriors attacked. It wasn't battle, it was slaughter. 300 trained soldiers against 150 mercenaries whose employer was choking. The mercenaries broke within minutes, scattering into mountains. Through it all, Isla stood over Caspian's convulsing form, shackled hands, steady voice, colding him. "You called me nothing, called me vessel, called me property." She crouched, meeting his bulging eyes. "But I'm standing, and you're on the ground. Funny how that works." Theron appeared, ice forming around frost shackles as he worked to remove them. They fell away. Isla's magic surged back, and she gasped with relief. "Finish it," Theron said quietly. "He's yours to judge." Isla looked down at Caspian. So easy. A spike of ice through the heart. Justice. But she thought of her child, of the world she wanted that child to inherit. One where justice meant more than revenge. No, she stood, Theron's arm around her. He faces trial. Public legal with witnesses and evidence. That's how we do this. That's how we're better. Theron's smile was fierce. "As you wish, my queen." They bound Caspian in regular iron and loaded him into a cart. His breathing was better, allergic reaction passing, but he looked broken. The ride back took most of the night. Isla dozed, waking only when they passed through fortress gates at dawn. A crowd had gathered. Word spread the king rode to war and returned victorious. But standing in chains between guards, crimson dress torn, was Evangeline Bloodmore. Theron helped Isla down, then addressed the crowd, warriors, noble servants, everyone. 3 days from now, public trial. Lord Caspian Ravenwing stands accused of systematic abuse, attempted kidnapping, and conspiracy with Lady Evangeline Bloodmore to betray Iron Peak. His voice carried. "All evidence will be presented, all testimony heard. Justice will be served in full view. Because this is how we do things. We don't hide in shadows. We face truth in daylight." The crowd erupted in approval. Isla watched Evangeline's face. Saw hatred, fury, but also fear. The lady who'd schemed for 3 years was finally caught. 3 days to prepare for the trial that would determine so many fates. But first, Isla needed sleep. The baby kicked up a storm, protesting excitement. Theron seemed to sense her exhaustion because he scooped her into his arms and carried her toward the fortress. "I can walk," she protested weakly. "I know, but I carried you across the border when you were dying. I'll carry you to your chambers when you're victorious." He kissed her forehead. "Let me take care of you, please." So she did. The next 3 days passed in preparation. Aldrich gathered evidence financial records showing Council of Six embezzlement letters between Evangeline and Caspian testimony from servants who'd witnessed Lyora taking orders. Rowena examined Isla documenting every scar from Caspian's beatings, every sign of systematic abuse. Isla practiced testimony with Theron, going over details until her voice stopped shaking when she spoke of Caspian's chambers, of the locked door of the window that had been her only escape. On trial morning, Isla woke to Theron sitting on her bed's edge, hand resting on her swollen belly. "She's awake," he said softly. "Been kicking for an hour. She knows today is important." Isla covered his hand. "Are you ready? I'm not the one testifying before 400 people. Oh, concern written in every line." "Are you?" Isla thought. 3 weeks ago she'd have said no. 3 weeks ago she'd been a refugee barely surviving. But now she was the king's mate. Now she had ice magic. Now she had a king who looked at her like she hung the moon, and a daughter who would inherit all of it. "Yes," she said, "I'm ready." The great hall was packed. Every noble family, every warrior, every servant. 400 people, maybe more. At one end, Theron sat on his throne. At the other, in chains, sat Caspian and Evangeline. And above, watching from a raised platform, sat 5 ancient wolves. The Council of Elders, the highest authority in all territories called to oversee justice when crimes cross borders. The eldest was a woman, perhaps 70, with hair like spun silver and eyes that saw through lies. Elder Morwenna. She stood and silence fell. "We are gathered to witness justice, to hear evidence of crimes against an Omega, against a kingdom, against the natural order itself." Her voice carried to every corner. "Let the testimony begin." What followed was methodical, devastating. Aldrich presented financial records proving Council of Six had embezzled $200 million over 3 years. Showed how they'd funneled money to Evangeline, who built her spy network. Then came letters, 47 of them exchanged between Evangeline and Caspian. Each more damning than the one, plotting Isla's capture, discussing breeding potential of frostborn children, planning invasion that would have destroyed Iron Peak. Lyora testified, next, voice shaking. Evangeline had bought her family's debt 3 years ago, used it as leverage to force Lyora into service as spy. Mercury poisoning had been Evangeline's order, delivered through intermediary so Lyora could claim ignorance if caught. "I'm sorry," Lyora sobbed, looking at Isla. "I didn't want to hurt you, but my mother, my sister's debtor's prison. I didn't know what else to do." Isla felt complicated emotion. Anger, yes, but also understanding. Lyora had been trapped, forced to choose between bad and worse. Then Isla's turn. She walked to the hall's center, Theron's eyes on her the whole way. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "I was nobody, an orphan raised in Lord Caspian's kitchens. For 18 years I scrubbed pots, peeled vegetables, tried to be invisible." She met Caspian's eyes. "Then a healer saw my birthmark, the winter rose, proof of frostborn blood, and everything changed." She described the summons to his chambers, wine on his breath, hands that didn't ask permission, guards who held her while he did what he wanted. Her voice never wavered, though inside she screamed. "When I discovered pregnancy, he called it good breeding stock, said the child would be useful. A weapon to control, to use to—" Her voice broke. "I couldn't let that happen, so I ran." She showed scars, pulled up her sleeve, revealing marks from beating when she tried escaping the first time. Showed calluses from years of kitchen workplaces where skin had been burned. "I walked 3 days through wilderness to reach Iron Peak's border. Fevered, pregnant, dying. And King Theron carried me across that border himself. Saved my life, gave me sanctuary." She looked at Theron, bond blazing. "Gave me hope." The hall was silent. Some nobles crying, others looked sick. Isla turned to Elder Morwenna. "This child deserves a world where her mother's body isn't property. Where power doesn't mean the right to take what you want. Where justice means something." She placed hands on belly. "I'm testifying not just for me, for her, and for every Omega who's been told they're nothing but breeding stock." Elder Morwenna's ancient eyes were wet. "Thank you, child. Your courage honors us all." Then came the moment. One of the Council of Six, Lord Sterling, was brought forward. He'd been arrested fleeing with embezzled gold. Under Elder Morwenna's questioning, he broke. "It was Evangeline's plan," he sobbed. "All of it. She came to us 3 years ago. Help her become queen, we'd control Iron Peak's iron mines. 200 million in profits. We funded her network, placed spies." He looked at Evangeline desperately. "But the invasion, that was your idea. You contacted Ravenwing. You offered him the frostborn heir. You betrayed all of us. Evangeline's mask shattered completely. I loved you, she screamed at Theron, voice raw. I waited 3 years. I did everything right. I came from the right family, had the right bloodline, supported your rule, and you never looked at me, not once. But you look at her like she's my mate, Theron said quietly. Because she is. She's nothing. A pregnant refugee with no name, no family, no worth. She's worth more than you'll ever comprehend. Theron stood descending to stand beside Isla. His hand found her fingers intertwining. Because she survived hell and came out stronger. Because she values justice over revenge. Because when she looks at me, she sees a partner, not a throne. He turned to Elder Morwenna. I have a request. Speak, King Theron. Before sentences passed, I wish to formally claim Isla Frost as my mate before this court. To bind us not just by the bond the gods gave us, but by the laws of our people. Collective gasp. Elder Morwenna smiled. Then let it be done. What followed was ancient, beautiful, achingly simple. Theron took Isla's hand and spoke words that had bound mates for 1,000 years. I choose you, Isla Frost, not because fate demands it, but because my heart recognizes yours. I claim you as mate, as partner, as equal. From this day until my last breath, you are mine, and I am yours. Isla's voice shook, but words came clear. I choose you, Theron Ironpeak, not because I need protection, but because I want partnership. I claim you as mate, as equal as the father my daughter will know. From this day until my last breath, I am yours, and you are mine. Then came marking. Theron's teeth at her neck, the bite that would scar, that would tell every wolf she belonged to the AlphaKing. But Isla had made one change. I mark you in return, she said, and bid him back. The hall erupted. No Luna Queen had ever marked her king. Tradition was one-sided Alpha claiming Omega. But Isla had refused and Theron had agreed because they were equals, partners bound by choice as much as fate. When they separated, both bore marks that would never fade. Equal, mutual. Perfect. Elder Morwenna's smile was approving. Well then, now that's settled, let us render judgment. She turned to face Caspian and Evangeline. Lord Caspian Ravenwing, you stand convicted of systematic rape, forced breeding, attempted kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit treason. The sentence is death by beheading, to be carried out immediately. Caspian's face went white. You can't, I'm a lord, I have rights. You forfeited those rights when you treated an Omega as property. Elder Morwenna's voice was cold as winter wind. Take him to the courtyard. Let justice be swift. Guards dragged Caspian away, his screams echoing. Isla felt nothing, no satisfaction, no grief, just quiet closure. Lady Evangeline Bloodmore, you stand convicted of attempted murder conspiracy with a foreign lord, treason, and crimes against the crown. Normally, such crimes would also warrant death. Elder Morwenna paused. But Luna Queen Isla has requested mercy. Evangeline's head snapped up, eyes finding Isla's. Life in the northern wasteland, Isla said quietly. Exile. All titles stripped, house dissolved, branded as Oathbreaker so everyone knows. Let her live with her choices. Why, Mom? Evangeline's voice was broken. Why show me mercy? Because I'm not you. Because mercy is stronger than revenge. Because I want my daughter to grow up in a world where we're better than our worst impulses. Isla's hand went to belly, felt the baby kick. And because I pity you, you had 3 years to build something real. Instead, you built a house of lies. And now you have the rest of your life to live in that wasteland of your own making. Elder Morwenna nodded. So be it. Evangeline Bloodmore, you are sentenced to life exile in the Arctic wasteland. You will be branded and expelled before nightfall. As guards led Evangeline away, Isla saw tears streaming down the woman's face, not remorse. Tears of rage and loss, in bitter knowledge. She'd gambled everything and lost. The Council of Six received similar sentences, life imprisonment in Elder's custody, all assets seized and returned to trade routes they'd stolen from. Then Elder Morwenna addressed the assembled court. Let this day be remembered. Let it be known that in Iron Peak justice is not just a word, it is a promise. She looked at Isla, ancient eyes warm. And let it be known that Luna Queen Isla Frost has shown us all what true strength looks like. Not in violence, but in survival. Not in revenge, but in mercy. Not in claiming power, but in choosing partnership. She raised her staff, voice ringing. I hereby declare a new law throughout all territories under elder governance. Omega trafficking is now punishable by death. Forced breeding is punishable by death. Any alpha who treats an Omega as property rather than person will face the full weight of elder justice. This is our decree, sealed this day by the testimony of the brave and the downfall of the cruel." The hall erupted in cheers. Isla felt Theron's arm around her waist, felt the baby kick against both their hands, felt the bond between them singing with joy and relief and sweet, sweet victory. Justice had been served, and now finally they could begin their life together. 4 weeks later, as spring thaw turned mountains green and flowers bloomed in fortress gardens, Isla, now 36 weeks pregnant and ready to burst, went into labor. It was long, difficult 12 hours of agony that left her screaming and cursing and swearing she'd never do this again. But Theron held her hand through all of it, whispering encouragement, telling her she was strong, amazing, doing so well. And when Aurora finally emerged pink and perfect and screaming with the full force of her tiny lungs, the temperature in the room plummeted. Frost spread across walls, ice crystallized on every surface. The water basin froze solid. Rowena gasped, pulling back. "The baby." Isla looked down at her daughter, still connected by the cord, and saw tiny hands glowing with a silver-white light, frost spiraling from fingertips across blood-stained sheets. "She has magic," Rowena whispered, awe and terror mixing. "Active ice magic at birth. Frostborn power doesn't manifest until puberty. This has never been recorded in all of history." Theron reached for his daughter with trembling hands, and the moment he touched her, the frost stopped. The room warmed. Aurora's hands stopped glowing, and she simply cried. A normal, healthy newborn. "She recognized you," Isla breathed. "She knew her father's touch." Theron held his daughter, regardless of blood, and tears streamed down his face. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." "She's ours," Isla said, reaching for them both. "Yours and mine, forever." 3 months after that, in high summer, when mountains were warm and green, they held another ceremony. Isla stood before the assembled court in a gown of silver and white ice crystals woven into her hair by her own magic. Aurora slept in a basket at Theron's feet, tiny frost patterns dancing across her blanket. Elder Morwenna placed a crown of iron and ice on Isla's head. "I present to you Isla Iron Peak, formerly of House Frost, Luna, Queen of Iron Peak territory, mate to your AlphaKing mother, to your future heir, and protector of all who seek refuge." The crowd roared approval. Nobles who'd once whispered refugee trash now bowed deeply. Servants who'd watched her arrive dying now cheered for their queen. Elder Morwenna stepped forward, placing one ancient hand on Isla's head, the other on Theron's. 500 years this kingdom waited for its Luna Queen. Not for the right bloodline, but for the right heart. Her blind eyes seemed to see everything. "The frost has returned to these mountains, and with it healing. May your reign be long, your love unbreakable, and your daughter." She looked down at Aurora's basket where tiny snowflakes danced. "May she grow to wield power with the same mercy her mother showed today." And at the border where Isla had once collapsed in the snow, a new monument stood. Carved into its stone face were the words, "All who seek refuge find home here," carried across by King Theron, year 500 of his reign, protected by Luna Queen Isla, whose courage changed a kingdom. Below it, a smaller plaque read, "Leora's Sanctuary, where second chances begin." The maid who'd nearly poisoned a queen now ran a refuge for those trapped by debt and desperation, her own redemption found in helping others escape the chains she'd once worn. That night in their private chambers, Isla stood at the window with Aurora in her arms, Theron's arms around them both. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. "I'm thinking," Isla said slowly, "about the woman I was 4 months ago. Dying in the snow, terrified, convinced I was worth nothing." She turned to look at him. This king who'd chosen her, this man who'd carried her across the border and into a new life. "And I'm thinking about the woman I am now, a mother, a queen, your mate. You think I made you that woman?" "No," Isla smiled. "I think you gave me the safety to become her myself." Aurora made a small sound and frost sparkled in the air above her cradle. Outside the window, unseasonable snow began to fall, dancing through summer air in defiance of all natural law. "Our daughter," Theron said, wonder in his voice, "making it snow in July." "Our daughter," Isla agreed, "who will grow up knowing she's loved, who will never be told she's property or a weapon or anything except precious." She leaned back against Theron's chest, feeling his heartbeat against her spine, feeling the bond between them, that golden thread that had saved her life in more ways than one. 4 months ago, she'd been a refugee dying at a border. Now she was home. Now she was safe. Now she was exactly where she belonged. The frost came not to conquer, but to heal. And in a fortress of iron and stone, A family built of choice rather than blood proved that the strongest bonds weren't the ones fate handed you. They were the ones you claimed for yourself.